Today we're going to go ahead and learn about dividing mixed numbers. So let's take a mixed number, and we learned about that in multiplying fractions. So let's look at a mixed number. We have 2 1/4 divided by 3/8. 2 1/4 divided by 3/8. First, let's look at our mixed number. Before we can actually do anything, we need to make our mixed number a fraction. So let's look at some steps here. First thing we need to do is make fractions. They can be improper. They can be improper fractions, which meant that they are bigger on top. They can be improper fractions, which means they're bigger on top. That's okay. And how we did that was we multiplied 4 times 2, which equals 8, and then we add the 1. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, and we put it over the 4. And then we divide by 3/8. Now we're back to where we were when we were dividing fractions. We have to multiply the reciprocal. So the next step is multiply the reciprocal. You want to multiply the reciprocal. So here we have 9/4 divided by 3/8. So here we're going to multiply the reciprocal. So we're going to take our 9/4, and that stays the same. It's just 9/4. And then we're multiplying the reciprocal. So we multiply, we change it to multiplication, and the reciprocal is when we flipped the two numbers. So 3/8 becomes 8/3. Now we go ahead, and the next step is multiply your fractions. Multiply your fractions. So I'm going to just multiply straight across. 9 times 8 is 72, and 4 times 3 is 12. Now I'm back to an improper fraction, so I have to make it a whole number or a mixed number depending on what we have. So I have to see how many times does 12 go into 72. So 72 divided by 12. Well, we know 12 goes in 6 times. 6 times 12 is 72. So my answer, my final answer, because I'm left with 0 remainder, is 6. But I want to show you guys another way of doing this, because 72 just seems like a really big number, and I don't like big numbers. So I'm just going to rewrite this problem right here. 9/4 times, 8/3. So I just rewrote this here. It's the same thing. I'm going to show you a little trick, like a magic trick. And we're going to do something called cross canceling. We're going to cross cancel some of these fractions. So when I mean cross cancel, we're going to look in a diagonal way. We have a 4 and an 8, and I ask myself, what factor goes into 4 and 8? And I know that 4 goes into 4, I know 4 goes into 8. So I say, okay, how many times does 4 go into 4? So I'm going to cross it out, and I'm saying 1 time. So I replace the 4 with a 1, and I know that it goes into 8 2 times. So I crossed off the 8, and I replace it with a 2. Now I'm going to cross cancel and see if I can. Sometimes you can't, but I'm going to see if I can. 9 and 3 and 9. I know 3 goes into 3 once. I know 3 goes into 9 3 times. So I'm just going to rewrite this. This is 3 over 1 times 2 over 1, because we replaced our numbers. So now I have 3 times 2, which equals 6, and 1 times 1, which equals 1. So anything over 1 is just going to be a whole number, and my answer is 6. And you can see that I get the same answer that I did above. I just ended up working with some smaller numbers because I cross-canceled. So essentially, because our fourth step was to simplify up here, we simplified at the end. Now I just simplified in the problem instead, so these two became changed around. Let's try another problem. Three and 5/6 divided by 1 2/3. So my first step was to make fractions. So I'm going to do 6 times 3, which equals 18, and then add my 5. So 18 plus 5 equals 23. So I'm going to write 23 over 6. I just rewrote this fraction. So 6 times 3 is 18. Add the 5, and I get my 23, and I just leave the denominator the same. Divided by, still just making fractions, we're not multiplying reciprocal yet. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So I have 5/3. Again, that's 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5, and my denominator stayed the same. So now I'm back to fractions. So now I'm going to do step 2, which is multiply the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply the reciprocal. So I'm going to change this division to multiplication, and I'm going to find the reciprocal. So I leave 23/6 alone. And then I change it to a multiplication sign because I'm multiplying the reciprocal. And 5/3, the reciprocal of 5/3 is 3/5. So now I'm going to cross cancel because I want to work with smaller numbers. I don't want to work with big numbers. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know the 6 and the 3. I know 3 goes into 3 one time because I'm going to cross cancel here. 3 goes into 3 once, so I change that to a 1, and 3 goes into 6 twice. I look here at 5 and 23, and I know that there's no factor that goes into 5 and 23, so I can't do anything with them. I just have to leave it alone. Now the next step, I can just multiply my fractions. 23 times 1 is 23, and 2 times 5 is 10. Now I'm left with an improper fraction, so I must simplify here. I have to see how many times does 10 go into 23? Well, I know 10 goes into 20. 10 times 2 is 20. So I'm going to put a 2 there because 10 times 2 is 20. And I subtract. I'm left with 3 remainder. So my answer is going to be 2 and 3 remainder over 10. Instead of writing 2 remainder 3, we write 2 with our remainder on top of the 10 because we didn't have enough to make another group of 10. And I look to see if I can simplify that any further, and the answer is no, so that is my final answer. Let's try one more problem. I gotta get another piece of paper because I'm out. Okay, this time, what if I have a whole number? Eek, I have a whole number. I have 8 and 4/7, and I need to divide it by 15. Oh no, I have a whole number. I think you guys probably remember in my other video that it says in order to make 15 a fraction, you put a 1 under it. So it's really 15 over 1. But I need to make this a fraction first, so I'm going to rewrite this all and make it nice and neat. So 8 and 4/7 has to be a fraction. It can't be a mixed number. So 7 times 8 is 56, and 56 plus the 4 is 60. 60 over my 7 divided by 15 over 1. All right, now I got my fractions, so I can go ahead, and it looks good to multiply the reciprocal. So I have to multiply this reciprocal. also, I'm going to leave this alone, 60 over 7. That just stays the same. To multiply the reciprocal, I have to change this to a multiplication sign, and then the reciprocal is to flip these. So 15 over 1 becomes 1 over 15. So now I have 60 over 7 times 1 over 15. Now 60 is such a huge number. I really don't want to deal with it, so I'm going to simplify. And first I'm going to say, well, I know the special rule for 5. I know that 5 goes into 15, and I know 5 goes into 60 because it ends in a 5 or a 0. So I'm going to change that. 15, I'm going to change 5 goes into 15 3 times, and 5 goes into 60 12 times. But I'm still looking at the 3 and the 12, and I know that I can simplify that even further because I know that 3 is definitely a factor of 12. So I'm going to cross off my 3 again, and I know 3 goes into 3 once, so there's my final number there. And 3 goes into 12 4 times. So now really I have 4 times the 1 and 7 times the 1. So 4 times 1 is 4, and 7 times 1 is 7. So therefore, my final answer is 4/7, and I've already simplified it because I simplified it in the problem.